Pardon the interruption, but I'm Mike Wilbon. We're off the next 2 days, Tony. What do you do when you're not working?
I'm Tony Kornheiser. Occasionally, I get a little anxious. You've known me a while. You may have seen it.
No.
A little anxious. It's why it's best if I work. It's best if I work.
Or play golf. Golf, you're not anxious on the golf course.
Well, it's a different kind of anxiety on the golf course. It's watching the ball off the club, hitting it great, and it going 120 yards because I'm so old and I can't hit on my own shadow. Welcome to PTI, boys and girls. In today's episode, Connor McDavid wins the Conn Smythe. The NBA draft starts tomorrow, and an Olympic hopeful takes a tumble. But we begin today with Florida beating Edmonton last night 2-1 at home to win the Stanley Cup in a thrilling Game 7, set up by Edmonton winning 3 straight elimination games to keep this series alive. The beginning of the game, with the penalty to Edmonton and goal by Florida, played out just like you said, Wilbon. What do you think of the Panthers' win and how they did it?
Well, I'll tell you this, as a person rooting for Edmonton, when that penalty is taken for high sticking early in the game, and I know it wasn't a power play goal for Florida, but it might as well have been. It was right at the end of that penalty. I don't know that, that Edmonton had everybody in place where they wanted to at the end of that penalty kill. But, Tony, it was inspired, it was thrilling, it was nerve-wracking, it was exhausting, and I mean just watching it. It was everything you could want in a Game 7. And, look, I have always believed, I'm one of those people, and P.K. Subban told us this every day. He stayed with his pick. Every time we had him, he talked about defense winning. And I'm one of those people who believes in that. I follow a football team that hasn't had offense in 100 years, the Bears. So I believe defense wins championships, too. But I thought that Edmonton could muster enough offense to win one more game, and they could not. Florida's defense was up to it. Edmonton was exhausted. Their skaters were exhausted at the end of that game. They'd thrown everything they could. There was about an 8-minute stretch there where I don't know that you can be even better than Bobrovsky was, or luckier, because he had some open net situations, and it seems like Edmonton's guys were too tired to finish it off. But what a game. It's extraordinary. I'm sorry. I know people in Canada feel awful about this, but what a game. What a series.
Yeah. I'm going to give you credit for predicting the shape of the game. I'm going to give myself credit for saying the game would hinge on Bobrovsky. He had an extra day off between Games 6 and 7, which he spent at home. It was reported he didn't go anywhere near the ice rink. And the result was he saved 23 of 24 shots. So if you look at these 3 games, Mike, all in Florida, Game 1, Game 2, and Game 7, he gave up a total of 2 goals. He turned away 73 of 75 shots. He won those games by being brilliant. And in fact, through the entire course of the playoffs, Florida was 16-2 when Bobrovsky let up no more than 3 goals. I want to give credit to an unlikely source as well, and that is the coach, Paul Maurice. His demeanor on the bench and after games was, to me, remarkable.
Fabulous.
I mean, he said things that were so smart. And he was never one of those guys. Like, if you made a point to him, he would concede the point without getting angry. He wasn't a typical hockey coach who was going to be on the verge of implosion at all time. He's now 5-0 in Game 7s, Mike. 5-0. And I didn't know this, he's coached more games than anybody in the NHL ever, except for Scotty Bowman. He's coached 1,895 games. And to win a Stanley Cup late like this, good for him. Because he looks and sounds like a leader. Yeah.
He seems so worthy. I love listening to him. No matter what it is. I think that if it's just sitting around the fireside, you say, okay, Uncle Paul, tell us another story. And what a great raconteur he must be, in addition to leader. Connor McDavid did not win the Cup, but he did win the Conn Smythe Trophy as the most valuable player of the playoffs. Just the 6th player to win it from the team that loses the final. McDavid did not return to the ice to accept the award and said, quote, obviously, I guess it's an honor with the names on that trophy, but yeah, close quote. McDavid scored no points in the last 2 games of this series. Tone, where does this result leave him?
Yeah, I mean, you got to point out that he did not pick up the trophy, and I get that. It's a big hunk of metal, and it's not the big hunk of metal that he wanted. But I think he's sort of the obvious choice because Bobrovsky did indeed have 3 bad games. And in the Stanley Cup final, McDavid did something that had never been done before. He got 4 points in 2 consecutive games. Over the course of the playoffs, he set a record for assists. His total points over the course of the playoffs have only been exceeded by 2 people, Mario Lemieux and Wayne Gretzky. So, and he took his team back from 0-3. What do I think about what happened? I don't care that he didn't score in Game 6 because they won Game 6. Not scoring in 7, yeah, I think you have to make. I think he's damaged. I wouldn't consign him to oblivion because he could win this next year. But, Mike, we see this a lot. He had this thing in his grasp, and he couldn't hold it. It is not a choke by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a failure of sorts, right? It is a failure.
It is. If he played in another sport, maybe he'd try and, run and join Golden State and play a couple of years there and sort of rehabilitate his image. Maybe he'd do that, or he'd go down to Miami and join up with the Big Three. But I think he's going to stay in Edmonton. He gained respect from me. Gained it with the way he handled that at the end. When he's sitting there and you can see the disconsolate nature of everything going on that he is in that moment, and he says, yeah, I get it, but I'm not with this. That is what, if you lose in sports, whether it's the highest level or to your buddies on the weekend, and you're upset about it, you are depressed about it in the moment. He's a great player. He's going to have chances, plural, to win, and I hope they're in Edmonton. I hope it's not chasing a ring 8 years down the road like we see in some situations. But, Tony, I don't know that I would have voted for him. I don't have a problem with him winning, but I wouldn't have voted. Right. And it's all based on Game 7. You just outlined what Bobrovsky did in 1, 2, and 7. Okay, so
1, 2, and 7, yeah.
That didn't happen. That did not happen in Game 7. And Game 7's it. Game 7's the whole ball.
You could go that way. I just think cumulatively he was the best player out there, and so many people talk about him being the best player in the league.
He's great.
But it's damaging. It's damaging to your psyche. You hope he wins it soon. Let's move to tomorrow night's NBA draft. I will admit I know very little about it, and by very little I mean nothing. But that's why we have you on the show, Wilbon. You've been telling me for months that there are great foreign players out there. What intrigues you most about this draft?
Tony, I'm going to go history. That's what intrigues me about this draft. And I'm going to go with trending. You don't have to have number 1 and select Patrick Ewing with some frozen card from the lottery. This is not that NBA, Tony. You don't have to have 1, 2, or 3, because I'm going to read some names now. And this draft has people that we don't know, because NCAA basketball doesn't produce stars anymore because they don't stay long enough. Stars come later. Stars come when you hear somebody named Giannis Antetokounmpo, whose name you didn't know on draft night, and he wins a championship. That's when stars are made. So you have guys, I'm just going to mention a few. Derek White, who you love, all right, and American player. He was chosen 29th in the draft, Tony. Anunoby, 23rd. DeJounte Murray, who's going to get a bundle of money and get traded probably and be a star. He was chosen 29th. Siakam, 27th. Sabonis, 11th. Jamal Murray, 7th. You don't have to obey. How about Tyrese Maxey, 21st. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 11th. Jalen Brunson, 33rd. You don't have to know them. They don't have to be stars. Okay. Teams have to scout as well as they can, figure out who can play at whatever slot they're picking, and make the right selection. That's how you build a ball club now, and teams are doing it. Oklahoma City's one of them that does it. That's what you have to do.
Yeah, so I learned this morning something that intrigued me enormously. There's a 7'1" or 7 feet I think maybe 7'1", 7, whatever it is. It's 7 feet at least. He's French. His name is no, wait a second. Alex Sarr. No. Alex Sarr. And people say that he may be the best pick in the draft. He played in Australia this past year. And he doesn't want to go to Atlanta, apparently, which has the number 1 pick because he won't work out for them.
Yep.
But he wants to go to Washington, which has the number 2 pick. He wants to be a Washington Wizard. And this is great because nobody in America wants to be a Washington Wizard. They don't have any good players. So this kid could come in and be a very good player right away. And that would make me happy. The Wizards have announced something like they're in the first year of an 8-year rebuild. You announce something like that because you know you stink and you want to keep your jobs for 8 years. My fear, of course, Mike, is that he's Kwame Brown Part 2. That would be my fear. I'm just excited somebody wants to be a Wizard. Let's take a break. Coming up, what's the word for the first impression J.J. Redick made as new head coach of the Lakers?
And how best to describe what befell the defending 800-meter Olympic gold medalist at yesterday's finals. He doesn't want to be a Wizard. He wants to live in Washington, which means he can be your twin. The two of you don't want to leave Washington. He doesn't care about the Wizards.
I want to see where Zach Edey and Donovan Clingan go because they're old school centers. Does this NBA accommodate them?
Yeah.
You know, are there animals? Time to exchange words with Wilbon. What's first?
At his introductory press conference, new Lakers head coach J.J. Redick seemed blank.
He seemed confident. Now, some people might text you that he seems smug. I'm not going to say that. I'm going to use the word confident. The moment was not too big for him. He provided the direction. The first thing he said, Mike, he said, I've never coached in the NBA before. I don't know if you guys have heard that. That is a great line. And then he said, we're here to win championships. I mean, do people want him to say, we're trying this 1 year to finish higher than 7th in the Western Conference? And then he brought up Danny Hurley. And this is the quote with Danny Hurley. During that whole courtship, at no point were my feelings hurt or bruised in any way. He's a 2-time national champion at UConn. I'm a 2-time 55 Swiss League champion at the 3rd and 4th grade level. I understood, you know. So everything that was aimed at him, he deflected immediately and gracefully, and I am now rooting for him.
Tony, I got a chance, as I do the last couple of years, to spend some time around J.J. Redick, particularly in the finals, a little bit. And first of all, my word is commanding, because that's what J.J. Redick is. You talk about confidence. People talk about Danny Hurley winning. I'm sorry. J.J. Redick was the National Player of the Year. National Player of the Year, and then played like 15 years in the NBA. Okay, so J.J. Redick is smart. He has the personality for this. He has had things thrown at him. I'm going to make this analogy. When he was in college, he was sort of a Caitlin Clark-like figure in that he was a great player and a lightning rod, and people went at him when he got to the NBA.
That's right.
And he never shrank.
That's right.
He seems like he's sort of made for this. And I've known J.J. Redick his whole adult life, and I've rooted for him. This is hard. This is going to be harder in some ways than that long 15-year playing career. But he's been in the eye of storms in his life, and he doesn't flinch. He's smart, and he's in control, and he's commanding. And if LeBron has anything left in the tank and Anthony Davis is as on board as people say he is, this is going to be worth watching. I don't know if they can beat out all those teams in the West that they have to beat out, but it's going to be worth watching.
What's next?
A thing Mo's fall in the 800-meter final at the U.S. Olympic trials was blank.
It was devastating. She's out. She's not going to run the 800 in the Olympics. She fell down. She got up. She finished the race. She finished too far behind. She's the defending gold medal champion in the Olympics. She won in Tokyo. She's the best we've got. She was the world champion in 2022, and it's not going to happen. This is the way it works in the United States of America. You go to the Olympic trials. You get one shot. If you don't place, you're out. There's no reconsideration. There's no redo. There's no appeal. It doesn't work that way for whatever happens. It's very democratic because everybody is equal, but it's very, very sad to see this happen.
And, Tone, for that reason, everything you set up just then is very harsh. In other countries, they may take other things to account and name you. They have that right because each Olympic committee, can do, usually, to some degree, what it wants. And they can put you on the team. Or they could be like basketball where famous people just say, you know, I think I'm going to play. You give up your spot. And that's what happens. But not in the track and field competition in the United States of America. And you and I have seen this. And you know, Tony, how devastating and harsh it is to sit there at the finish line and watch people have these moments. And you're like, oh, my God, he or she is out already. It's harsh. Remember when Dan O'Brien, there's a whole commercial campaign built around Dan and Dave. And Dan O'Brien fails to qualify in the pole vault and is gone, is out. For Barcelona, you better get back to the crib, son. You ain't gonna be in Barcelona. It is so jolting and harsh. I can never get over that. Never.
Maybe she makes a relay, but she's not running the 800. That's the final word. Let's take one last break, but still to come, Tennessee wins the college baseball title.
And Italy grabs a draw from the jaws of defeat. Yeah,
but that's the way we do it. Everybody knows the rule. That's the rule.
I know.
And there's no reconsideration. There's no appeal.
You know, Mike Tyson lost in the box office, didn't he?
Happy time, people. Happy 60th birthday, Del Curry. The former shooting guard for Charlotte, Toronto, Cleveland, Utah, and Milwaukee played 16 seasons in the NBA. He averaged 11.7 points per game and was the 1994 Sixth Man of the Year. Now Curry is broadcasting Charlotte games, but what he's known for most is being Wardell's Stephen Curry I. His son Steph is the best-known Curry and has obscured his old man. Here's a curious factoid. At one point this season, the Golden State Warriors had 5 sons of playing in a game out on the court together. Curry, Klay Thompson, son of Michael, Gary Payton II, Andrew Wiggins, son of Mitchell, Trace Jackson Davis, son of Dale Davis. That is keeping it all in the family.
Man, it is, Tony. Listen, if you're Del Curry, you got to tell your son just to get lost. You got to tell Steph to get lost because now he beats him in golf. I mean, you know, Del Curry's probably, I don't know, a 6 or 7 handicap, and he can't beat Steph. And every time I see him, I go, have you beaten him yet? Have you beaten him back? And he can't beat him anymore. I think he got him once last summer. By the way, don't forget about Seth Curry, whose career shooting percentage from 3 is better than Steph. Seth above Steph. How about that? Just saying.
Happy anniversary, Joe Mikulik. On this day 18 years ago, Mikulik, the manager of the single-A Asheville, North Carolina Tourists, had a managerial meltdown that endears him to us even now. To recap, Mikulik slid into second base. He then picked up second base from its moorings and eventually threw said second base into the outfield. He then kicked dirt onto the home plate umpire. He covered home plate with dirt. He threw a bunch of bats onto the field and ran back out to clean off home plate with a bottle of water. He was tossed, of course, and exited through an outfield wall. Oh, he's the all-time wins leader for the Asheville Tourists.
If I was the commissioner of that league, I would have called somebody in law enforcement I'm friends with, and I would say, listen, here's what I want. I'll give you a favor, whatever you want in return. Come to the ballpark, put our guy in handcuffs, and take him to jail. We can say it was a joke after he's been in there a few hours, but if he wants to have that exaggerated reaction, so can we. Carry him out.
Happy trails to yesterday's Euro match for Croatia. Croatia had Italy on the ropes after 38-year-old Luka Modric, who had been stopped on a penalty kick less than 2 minutes prior, drove home a rebound in what some thought could be his final international contest. But with just seconds remaining in stoppage time, Mattia Zakanya, I hope I get that right, buried a shot into the far corner to gain the draw and lift Italy into the knockout stage of a tournament it won 3 years ago. It was the little-used 29-year-old's first international goal. Over here in Copa America play, the big result was Costa Rica somehow earning a scoreless draw with the heavily favored Brazil, which is playing without the injured Neymar.
Tony, having Modric in that situation is great. I saw him play in the 2018 World Cup semi against England when they won that game in Moscow, and he was still in his prime then. But at 38, yeah, he's on his way out now. But he had a moment there yesterday.
I think that the winner of Copa America should play the winner of the Euro Cup. They should just play it. Play it in Iceland. Be a good place. One error. There is an appeal process for the U.S. track and field trials, but Mo's appeal was denied. So if you're going to deny that appeal, there's no real appeal process. Let's go to the big finish. Tennessee beat Texas A&M to win the Men's College World Series. Your thoughts?
The SEC dominates baseball as much as it dominates football. It just do. It win everything every year. The Bruins traded goalie Linus Ullmark to the Senators. Does that make sense?
Okay, so that means it's the end of the alternate goalie situation in Boston, right? That means that Jeremy Swayman, he's it, right? He's the guy, because they got rid of the other guy. The Dodgers shut down Clayton Kershaw for a week due to shoulder soreness. Is there cause for concern?
Well, Dave Roberts called it a blip, but at some point, as great as he is, you want to see him actually pitching games this season before we get to September. The Guardians beat the O's for their 6th straight win and the Orioles' 4th straight loss. Is that significant?
I'm not worried about the Orioles. They've got a good team. 4 losses doesn't mean anything. Cleveland is so much better than people thought they were going to be. That division is better than people thought. Don't sleep on Cleveland anymore. Last one, WNBA in-season title game tonight. The Lynx and the Liberty. Who you got, Mr. In-Season Tournament?
I'm not going to start predicting outcomes of WNBA games unless the Sky is involved. But I'm going to watch. These two teams are having great seasons so far, so I want to watch that game. I'm going to watch WNBA games. Doesn't need to involve Caitlin Clark for me to watch.
We're out of time. We will try and do better the next time. Sarah Rose, shout out. She's the ice cream queen from McConnell's.
I'm Mike Wilbon. We are bumped by NBA draft coverage until Friday, you knuckleheads. And now, here's Sports Center. McDonald's cones. Love those. Love them.
McConnell's ice cream. McConnell's.
Oh, oops.
BTI bonus segment.
All right, Wilbon. Who is the best player to never win a championship in any sport?
Oh, my God, Tony, that list is so long. And it's a glamorous list. I mean, it's got Hall of Famers galore. I'm going to do, we get the glasses, I'm going to do an all-Chicago list first. And it's Banks, Sayers, Butkus, Urlacher, and Jenkins, right?
What a surprise.
Banks, Sayers, Butkus, Urlacher, and Jenkins. That's pretty good, right? But the all-time, the list forever and ever of all people from all places has got to have Ted Williams and Elgin Baylor on it for my money. And then I got to have Ken Griffey Jr., I got my dear friend Charles Barkley, and I got Tony Gwynn. And I know I'm passing on Patrick Ewing, a dream teamer and a Hall of Famer as well. But that's going to be my 5. Williams, Baylor, Griffey, Barkley, and Gwynn.
Okay, so did you mention Patrick Ewing? Didn't he win an NCAA championship? Well, doesn't that count if you win an NCAA?
He did.
Yeah,
good.
so he's off the list.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
Take him off the list. All right.
Cool.
I am going to be harsh here. I am going to eliminate every single player who played in what we would agree is the expanded playoff era. Because they had shots. They had shots 8, 10 times.
Yep. That's fair.
I mean, that's on. So fair. I'm just eliminating all of them. And I'm going backwards, and I'm going to concentrate on baseball because for 100 years, baseball defined sports in America, team sports in America, was essentially baseball. Ahead of football, basketball, hockey, everything else. And for me, there's one guy. It's Teddy Ballgame. He's the greatest hitter of all time. He got one shot in a World Series and he didn't win. Because in those days, if you didn't win the league, there was no other playoff. You had to win the league to get to the World Series. So that combination, his being in only one, and I could make a case for Ernie Banks as well if you want to do that, because he never even got to the World Series. But Ted Williams, the greatest hitter of all time. So for me, he's the greatest player to never win a championship.
You know I'm not going to argue that. And remember, at one time in the NFL, you had to win. There were only 2, whatever you want to call them, divisions or conference. You had to finish atop that. And you advanced to a championship game, and Butkus and Sayers didn't make that, so they didn't get to play in a playoff at all. So they weren't in the expanded playoffs.
Mike, they were not in the expanded playoff era.
Right.
They were not.
Yes,
so they rise up on the list, yes.
Yeah. Everybody under 60 sitting at home going, what's expanded playoff era? We don't understand that. We know you don't. Listen up. That's it. We're done. Back to you.